that we can make dreams come true. I really do firmly believe that. You have to have trust. Trust has proof. And you have to have proof that I'm going to do what I can to take care of you. That if you need an extra day, I'm going to give it to you no matter what.
Matt, tell me, where are we sitting right now?
This is our newest build out. So we don't really know what it's going to be yet. I guess originally I had it in mind to be the Breakfast Club. This is where we were going to meet and have breakfast and before our Monday morning meetings. But that's kind of changing because we're getting big enough now that we don't fit in this space. So now I'm starting to rethink that. As this morning you saw, it takes a lot of space to feed 100 people. So I believe this will end up being probably the My Salesman offices, probably some leadership training, probably make it into more of a training center area than anything to do with Empire, I guess, really. Just because even this morning I was looking around, I was like, holy cow, we filled up half of that 150-foot space out there. So we're definitely not going to fit in here. But this is also a little bit of, we keep building and growing, and man, we keep exceeding expectations. And next thing you know, I'm out of space. So get this. So we had a facility in Lincoln. We call it the 5151 building because it was on 5151 Cotner. And that was our first real office outside of my house. So we had my house, then we had a storage unit, and then we had 5151. And 5151 was a horrible facility, but we had 5 offices and a space that the guys could get vehicles in to work on in the wintertime. And we had a place that we could do a little bit of welding, but not much. And it worked. I think we were there for maybe 2 or 3 years. And then we built HQ, which I showed you last night. And I built that and I thought, oh my goodness, we're going to have plenty of room. Matter of fact, we're going to have to lease out offices. So I was looking for people to lease spaces because when you build a facility like that, you have to look at your mortgage I call it a mortgage, but in commercial, it's not called a mortgage, but you have to look at your payment on that. And you have to say, okay, we need so much more than that to take care of maintenance and upkeep and painting the lines on the parking lot and just snow removal. So you have to look at that. So if let's say your monthly payment's $15,000 a month to the bank, you need to have about $18,000 or $19,000 coming in, right? Because you have to have that extra $2,000 or $3,000 to make it cash flow. So I said, okay, I'll just lease out a whole bunch of these spaces at $500 a month and blah, blah, blah. And then we'll rent out this and I'll charge $2,000 a month for this. Well, next thing you know, we move into that space and it's full. And I'm like, oh my goodness, we have one tenant. Well, that's not going to, now we're all paying for it ourselves. And then the next thing you know, a year later, I walk around and I've got 2 people in one office and 2 people in this office and 2 people in this office. And then I've got, a gal sitting basically in a hallway in a makeshift office. And I'm like, oh my goodness, now what do I do? Yeah, well, we need more space. So then when I designed this, I thought, okay, I know I need this much space, which upstairs, there's offices up there. But then I thought, okay, well, let's build it so we have a little bit of room that we don't have to build the whole infrastructure. We can just put up offices. So that's kind of what this space is about. And I was experimenting. Notice I colored the concrete. That's maroon. That's Empire's colors. And I polished it, which is something unique. Not a lot of people do it. In our first building, we didn't polish the concrete. So I'm experimenting with what look do we like? What do we want? What do we want it to look like? We're trying the open ceiling concept. As you can tell, it's a little echoey in here. So we probably should have done a false ceiling to absorb sound. But that's what this is about. This is a little bit of a experiment.
The look in here is really cool. So, Empire is a fencing netting, it's a construction company. But in your headquarters, you guys have something really unique. Tell me about the Wave.
So the Wave is kind of a pipe dream that I had probably 15, 18 years ago, somewhere in there. I was the director of our local basketball organization, which is weird, right? Because I was a wrestler, but my son was a basketball player, so that's what he was passionate about. So then I dove into it and tried to learn basketball. I even coached a little bit, which is a joke, right? Because wrestlers should not coach basketball. Let's just be honest. It's not in our wheelhouse. With all these kids, the school is the only place locally in our town that is providing a place for them to get better, for weightlifting, for training, for specialized training. And I guess I just thought, man, when we build a building, let's build something for the kids to have that they can go to get better at whatever they're doing. I honestly didn't know what it would look like. I thought I'd have like a rock climbing wall, or I thought all these different things, and which is also part of business. So I tell people all the time, you dream whatever you want to dream, but be okay with that dream changing a little bit along the way, because that's the path of least resistance and it's okay to let it go that way. But the Wave turned out to be more of a baseball, softball training facility. Now, we have had soccer in there. We've had football in there. We've done some down lineman drills, and we've worked on footwork and stuff like that. But it's it's all about trying to give our kids in the local community someplace to go. And it was funny. I was talking to Luke one day, and I said, my dream is that one summer day when it's really, really hot out, that kids will just show up and play wiffle ball or something in there. And one day he called me and he said, hey, you've got to come see this. There was bicycles laying all over the sidewalk, and all the kids were inside. They were playing a pickup wiffle ball game. They made their own rules. They put out their own bases, which I think is part of the problem with society today, is that we teach our kids how to do organized sports. We don't ever let them teach themselves how to do an organized sport. Right? We don't just say, you figure it out. You make your own rules. They had a rule that if it hit above a certain spot, that it was a home run. If it hit the net, it was a foul ball. If it hit the net, it had to hit above. I mean, they were making up all their own rules, and the kids were there playing, figuring out their pecking order. And it was funny. We have cameras in there, and we even caught them. Two of the kids got in a fight over a call, but they had to work it out. And by the end, it was all okay. I think we've taken a little bit of that away from society. We've said, no, we have to do organized sports. We will have referees. We will teach you how to do this. You'll follow all these rules. I like the way we're doing it there. A little bit of just tell the kids, you go figure it out. I think when we were in there was kids playing a game of keep away or something.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out what they were doing, but it looked like they were figuring it out on their own. So say hi and just keep on walking. Don't get involved. Let them be on their own. That's what the Wave is all about. The Wave literally was just a pipe dream of what can we make it work. And the first 2 years, I'm not going to kid you, I thought, oh my goodness, this is not going to work. We are having to subsidize this way too much. But now it's doing okay. It'll never be a profit center, but that's not what it was built for. It was built to have a place for our community. And I think a lot of kids like it. A lot of kids use it.
It was really cool to watch it be that spot. I mean, teenagers come in to, hang out and do something besides be sucked into a screen.
Yeah.
Right. Did you always know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
Yes and no. I'm a farm kid, so I knew someday I was probably going to farm, and I wanted to run the farm. I wanted to do it my way. But I was also adopted, so my adopted dad and I are only 18 years apart, so we're more like brothers than father son. And it was never really in the cards for me to be on the farm. And that was tough for me to deal with. So I really thought I was going to be a farmer. I really wanted to be a farmer. Matter of fact, my hobby now is a little bit of farming. I dabble in farming a little bit now, but I dream of someday still having a farm. My own farm with tractors and equipment and animals, and it's a dream of mine. But reality is this is where we're at right now, and I get to do this with all the people you saw this morning. It was amazing. I really think that on the farm, more than likely the good Lord didn't want me to do that because he knew that we had another mission, and I wouldn't have been able to wouldn't have had 100 people that we could take care of on the farm, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not possible. So this is the route we were supposed to go down, and this is where we're at. So to answer your question, yes, I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I had no idea that it would be this, and I never dreamed that it would be. This was not my dream. Was not to have 100 people to take care of. My dream was to do things different, to do it our way.
How did those lessons growing up working on a farm like impact you as a business person, you starting your own company?
Well, farming is such a powerful occupation, right? I mean, you have no control over the weather. You have no control over the pricing. You have no control over the government. It's such a grind that you have to wake up every day knowing that I have to do everything I can within my control to do the best we can, to make sure that you're fertilizing right, to make sure you're walking the beans to get the weeds out, to make sure that you're spraying it right, to make sure that you're harvesting at the right time, that you're capitalizing in different things. In our farm, I will say my dad did a great job of, harvesting early the wet corn to maximize the weight, to go to the alcohol plants because they actually won't dock as much. I mean, all these things helped me realize that if you do a little extra, you'll get a little extra. And it's, let's be honest, it's a little bit biblical, right? You reap what you sow. I mean, think about this. You take a bushel of beans and you spread it out over an acre of ground in the hopes to get 30 or 40 more bushel. Yeah. So you take about 60,000 seeds and you spread it out over this acre of land and you're hoping to get 30 to 40. Well, that's business 101.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You reap what you sow. And I really believe that the parables of the different kinds of soils and the different the birds eating the seeds. I mean, it's powerful in being an entrepreneur, that the more you do for your people, the more they're going to do for you. I really do believe that if you take good care of your people and culture, I believe I've finally discovered that culture is number one. If your culture is number one, everything else will fall in line. And everything else is just a little bit easier. None of it is easy, but it's easier. And I just think that farming was such a life lesson for me that was the place I needed to be. By the way, I was born in Chicago, right?
Okay.
They say nothing good comes out of Chicago. Well, I would like to think we did something good.
When did you go out and start your first business?
18 years old. I talked the bank into giving me money for a semi. I hired a driver. I wasn't old enough to drive over the road yet. I was 18. You have to be 21 to cross state lines in a semi, so I couldn't even drive my own truck. And I had a driver, and it went really well. And I actually made some pretty good money with just one truck. So then I bought a second truck and a third truck and a fourth truck. And then I got up to 7 trucks. And then I started buying my own trailers, and we started doing construction, and it was really rolling. We were making really good money. Plus I was still farming. So I had some pretty good income off of the farm. I had trucking income. I thought I really had the cat by the tail. And then I started getting pretty wasteful in my spending. Went out and bought a brand new pickup truck and spent some money that I probably shouldn't have. And then I had a customer that decided not to pay us. And then my arrogance started getting in the way. And by the age of 29, I ran it right into the ground. And ultimately, a good friend of mine, which was my banker, said, "Matt, you need to just file bankruptcy and be done and move on." So I did.
What was that experience like?
I'd rather not talk about it. It's horrible.
It's a lot of responsibility to have a company and all the things that come along with people in your 20s.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I just wasn't mature enough to have a business at that time. I wasn't ready. I wasn't mentally ready. I was too immature. I was a complete jerk to most of our guys. My way or the highway type mentality. Rule with an iron fist. I reflect back now and it's almost embarrassing. Not even the bankruptcy, just the way you treated people and how we did it. But I suppose you wouldn't get where you're at if you didn't go through what you went through, right? So a little bit of that is I want to do things different now. And I even said we're gonna be better. But what's even more humiliating is from 2009 till about 2015, I still didn't have it figured out. I knew I wanted to do things different, but I didn't know that culture was my passion like it is now. I had a sense of it because I had empathy. I think Simon Sinek says that empathy is one of the main characteristics of a good leader. I know I have empathy. I care about people. I want people to do well. I had a young man come up to me at the end here and he says, "Hey, can I wash your windows of our businesses?" I was like, "Heck yeah. You want to wash our windows?" He's like, "Yeah." He goes, "I got a little side hustle." He goes, I'm not quitting." I'm like, "Oh, no. I'm not worried about you quitting. I love side hustles. I want you to." I said, "Do you have insurance?" He's like, "No, I can't get insurance." I said, "Oh, do you have a tax ID number?" "No." I said, "Ooh, are you taking advantage of any tax advantages?" "No." I'm like, "Oh, this is going to be so much fun. I'm going to make a call today. You're going to have insurance by the end of today. We're going to get you a tax ID number and you're going to do things right because I believe that in order to have a business, you have to do it right. You can't skip corners. You have to do the little things right and you have to be honest from the beginning. A side hustle is awesome. Take advantage of it, but do it the right way." So I don't know if I went off on a bunny trail there with you, but my idea is that it's a great opportunity for us to help him out.
Yeah.
With this. Plus, look at our windows. They look awful. We need them washed.
One of the byproducts of all the construction and growth going on around here, right?
It is.
Empire started as a side hustle.
It was.
How did that come to be?
I don't know if anybody knows this, but our very first job as Empire, the name wasn't even Empire. I came up with an acronym that nobody would recognize in case I failed. Nobody would notice me in the paper, right? Because when you file bankruptcy, it's in the paper. Everybody knows about it. So that was very humiliating for my family, for me. So I thought, okay, well, if I fail, I'll just make this company name. Okay. I just gave it 4 letters and I went with that. But our very first job was actually a track renovation. I renovated a track.
Okay.
Is that weird?
I don't know anything about track renovation.
So when I worked at Landscapes Unlimited, I learned a lot about tracks and track renovations because we did the football fields and then we would renovate the track around the football field because we would take the natural grass and turn it into synthetic grass and then we'd renovate the track. So I was doing a project up in West Point and Ted DeTurk asked me one day, he's like, "Hey, do you know anything about tracks? You want to come down and look at my track?" And so I went down and I looked at it. Well, to speed the story up, I ended up not having that job anymore. That's one of the jobs I was telling you about that I got fired on. But he called me up and he said, "Hey, I want to do you a solid. Why don't you remodel my track?" I was like, "Oh my goodness, that would be awesome." Well, that's when I had to figure out, okay, I need to buy the material. So I need to find a loan. I called 6 banks. All of them were like, "No way I'm giving you the money." All right, we're going to go down a bunny trail here. So remind me to come back to where we're at. But I went to 6 banks and they all said, "You don't have any credit." Because I filed bankruptcy. I was a mess. I didn't have any credit cards, so I wasn't building any new credit. I wasn't doing anything to build my credit. Horrible credit. Like the lowest it could be. No bank would would give me the $30,000 I needed to buy the material to do the track renovation, which was a $300,000 job.
Yeah.
Finally, just on a whim, I was talking to a friend of mine. He said, "Hey, have you been to Elmwood? Those guys out there they're a small enough bank that they'll loan you the money themselves and they don't have to do all the background check." So very nervously, I went out there. I walked in the door, not knowing anybody in this bank or anything about this bank. Walked in, and my Sunday school teacher's husband was in there, Mr. Westland. And immediately he's like, "Matt, what brings you in here?" So I sat down with John. I explained to him what I was doing. And all of a sudden, about halfway through the conversation, he started ignoring me. He was beep bop booping on his computer and typing something up. And I told him, I said, "I got this business plan. I got a job. It's a $300,000 job. This is how much money I think I'm going to make. And I need this. I need to do this." And I was super excited. And then I noticed he started not paying attention to me anymore. And I thought, oh, I lost him. And all of a sudden he says, "Hang on, let me get some paper." So he gets up and he tells somebody, and they come in with the loan documents for $30,000. Why? Years later, I asked him, I'm like, "Why did you give me that money? Why did you?" He goes, "I knew you would pay it back. I knew it. I felt it. I knew in your tone of your voice, you needed a chance." So they gave me a $30,000 loan. That was the very first job we ever did. It was a track renovation. It wasn't fence or net. It was a track renovation in West Point, Nebraska. Weird, huh?
No, I love that story. I have to imagine that gave you a lot of confidence to take the next step forward and to keep.
Oh, Brad, I was so scared. I was like, how fast can I pay this back? I was scared of failing. But I also think that's what kept me on edge. That's what kept me sharp, right? The fear of failing. And I've learned now, years later, that failing is good to a point, right? We around here, we use it as an acronym: first attempt in learning, fail. And I tell people all the time, fail and fail quick. Small failures are good. It's not if you get knocked down, it's how you get back up, which everybody hears that. It's everywhere in social media now. It's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get back up. It's so on and so forth. All these analogies.
Yeah.
Well, for me, that was my first chance to prove I'm getting back up, and I'm going to try this again. I'll be honest with you, I didn't tell anybody what I was doing. I really to this day don't even know if my family knows that was our first job. I don't even know if the people around this room even know that was our first job, because I was so scared of letting everybody down that I didn't tell anybody what we were doing. But yeah, it was a good feeling when I got done with it. And I actually made like $42,000. And I went, oh my goodness. And then I was scared to spend that money. So I was like, okay, I don't want to do what I did last time. So then you're like, that rear view mirror thing?
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard that analogy? That history is like the rear view mirror. You're looking at everything that's behind you, and you're constantly evaluating and trying to look at that rear view mirror of what happened, what you just left behind. I was constantly looking at that rear view mirror, and I was spending way more time looking at that rear view mirror than I was looking through the great big windshield. Does that analogy make any sense?
It makes perfect sense.
Okay. Great big windshield. We should be looking this way and just spend a little time looking in that little tiny rear view mirror.
Okay.
Spend more time looking at this big windshield. Does that make sense to anybody? It makes sense to me. Now,
how do you go about that transformation from being in a place where the fear of all the things that have happened and the rearview mirror might as well be as giant as the windshield?
It was.
To kind of letting it be the lessons that it is and focusing on the vision of the future. How do you make that transition? Because I'm sure somebody hearing this is going to be going through that.
Well, first of all, embrace the fear. The fear is what is going to make you the best version of you, because it's like working out, right? It hurts. It's scary. You have to get up every day and do it. Um, it's the transformation is so incredibly scary and difficult that, you know what, if you're unwilling to face the fear and deal with the fear, you probably shouldn't be in the business. You probably should just go get a job, and that's okay too. Or I tell people all the time too, don't worry about being the biggest. Just be your best. Being the biggest in whatever you do isn't where it's at. It's being the best and the best version that you can be. And ultimately for me, it's serving others, right? That's my gift, is I want to serve others. I was asked one time, what leadership skill do you see yourself as? And mine is a servant leader. I want to be a servant leader. I was not that way when I was 18 years old. Wanted to be a dictator. But now it's servanthood. We want to serve others. And holy cow, look around. We've grown like crazy. So I think it's a good way to do it.
I think the evidence around here speaks for itself.
I like that hat, by the way.
I managed to wrangle that this morning.
Well done.
You went through a very traumatic experience in your first business.
Yeah.
You dusted yourself off, but it was a side hustle. How did you know when it was time to transition it to be the main thing again? To go all in on this dream?
So August 24th, 2:37 in the afternoon, I got fired. I had a great job. I was making really good money. Vice president of a pretty good sized construction company. And the whole rug thing got pulled out kind of underneath me a little bit. And I had to figure out now it's time to figure it out now. Time to go to work. And that was tough. So get this, on the next day, Jamie and I were on an airplane flying to Augusta, Georgia, to meet with a company called Mainer Fence. We were going to sign them up for My Salesman. It was exciting because we were going to go there to sign up they had two branches, and both branches wanted it. So we literally flew all the way down there to sign them up. And the next day I was sitting on the plane, I was looking out that window, and Jay said, "Are you all right?" I said, "I don't think so, man. I'm scared. Like, I'm nervous about how is this going to work." Before, I knew that anything we made, I could pay you to make sure it's going, because I don't need anything. I don't have a job anymore. I got my last check on my way out the door, so I'm done. Mm-hmm. Now I've got to make this work. And it was a good thing Jay was next to me, because he's like, "We got this." I think I had him so brainwashed that he just thought we were going to make it no matter what. But he had no idea how nervous I was behind the scenes of saying, "Holy cow, I got to make sure everybody has a paycheck now." And we had 5 or 6 people that were working for Empire, in Empire at that time. So, the payroll was pretty small, but still, it doesn't matter. You got to make payroll. We had bills to pay. Bills were coming in, but they were doing a great job. So it wasn't near as scary as hindsight as it wasn't near as scary as I thought it was going to be, because, man, we just started clicking, and we landed a job in Texas, and we landed a job over here, and I landed a job over here. And I kept thinking, oh my goodness, where's the next job going to come from? And then we would land another job and another job. And I'm thinking, and then I found out that I had friends that had friends that had friends that would be calling us. So that's, what do they call it? A 3-tier lead, where you don't really know the person that gave the lead to the person that gave it to you. So then they were calling us, and I'm like, this is awesome. It was just one after another. It kept going. And then in 2017, we bid a big job. We bid a job that was bigger than our annual revenue. So I was excited. I was like, okay, we're gonna swing for the fence on this one. And ultimately, that job is the job that we built the building on. When we landed that job, I immediately said, we're building our own building. We're getting out of this mouse infested. By the way, our first building, 5151, had mice everywhere. They just helped themselves to anything they wanted. It didn't matter what was in your drawers, if it was paper or candy or whatever it was, the mice just ate it all. I literally thought they were going to overtake us. It was awful. It was not only the women screamed, but the men screamed. That's how many mice there were. I mean, you would open up a bucket of something and there'd be 6 of them in there, like a family having a little fiesta. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is horrible. But with that being said, that's the moment that I said, okay, let's push on the gas and let's figure this thing out. And that was 2018. We broke ground in 2018, moved into the building, I believe, in 2019. It's just not too long ago. So I really probably don't even have the right to sit here and tell people anything other than to sometimes you got to put your nose down and go to work. So I don't know if I have the...
The headquarters is impressive, but what really impresses me is how that you've kept the accelerator down and the way the rest of this whole campus has, I don't know what else to call it.
It is the campus, yeah.
Has kind of continued to evolve. I have a question for you because I think I'm interested in your take on it. You hear a lot about circle of competence, right? And in your evolution, there is it 5 or 6 different businesses that have grown out of that. How do you know when to take the next opportunity? I mean, there's a software company, there's a sandblasting company, there's the Unlimited Sports Solutions, there's all these different things. How do you know when it's time to do that versus the main thing? I mean, what does that mean to you, circle of competence?
You're a faith-based person, right? You believe in the power of prayer. You believe in there's a bigger power, right? Have you ever been driving down the road and you're just like, I need a billboard to just say, this is the way you're supposed to go. So Lord, just give me a billboard. I've yet to see that dang billboard. So the analogy of that is a lot like business. I'm telling you, the crystal clear sign is never there. But the more you do it, the better you get at projecting how it can be and where it can go. And each one of my businesses I've done a little bit better each time. The first one was a hot mess, right? Empire. Actually, no. My first one, the trucking company. I didn't have an accountant. I was doing the books, right? I didn't have a relationship with my banker. I went through 4 different insurance companies. I didn't have a relationship with the people that I bought equipment from. I didn't have any relationships. I would just search for the cheapest and where can I save money, and I can't afford that, and you need to cut your prices here, and I just beat up everybody, and I wouldn't buy a truck until I beat them up to the last penny that I could possibly get to. So the second time I did business, Empire, one of the first things I did was found somebody to do the books. I just said, listen, I can't pay you much, hardly anything at all, but if you'll do this for just a few hours a week, I'll send you the bills. Will you help me do this? Because I knew that I cannot be in the books. I would almost cook the books on myself without even realizing, because I wanted it to look good. So I would not enter some bills sometimes because I'm like, well, that's going to make my balance look horrible, and I need it to look good. So I'll just make this little stack of bills right here, and I'll wait till next week to enter them. These are the games I played with myself the first time I did business. The second time I told them, I said, listen, I want everything entered immediately as soon as that bill hits the door. So I improved. I guess I'll fast forward. I'm sorry, I'm probably taking too long to get.
No. Please share this. This is good.
So The second time I did business, Empire, I told Sarah, I said, listen, I need every single bill entered as soon as it hits the mailbox. I need every receivable, every payable, everything entered immediately, and don't ever let me change that or have any influence on that. That's your area. Keep me out of it. And then I came up with the reporting system. I call it my Friday reports. Pretty technical name, right? Friday reports. Yeah. It's a report that happens on Friday. I don't know if you could put that together. But my Friday report has the balances of our accounts that we're in. I did have one account that I would try to put like any tax liabilities in. I'd always put it in that account. We have a fencing account, and then we have the netting account, because I kind of wanted to have those separate accounts. Years later, I look back and I thought, I really probably didn't need to do that, but it helped me understand, because I'm a simple guy. I just needed to see where the money was. And there's a book out there that talks about different accounts for different envelopes, right? Yeah. Putting money in different envelopes. Yeah. What is that called?
Profit first.
Yeah. So that was just a great way of doing things. I didn't really do that. I put my own recipe on it. But my Friday report is account receivable, accounts payable, and balance sheet. And I do that every single Friday. I get it every Friday. I give it a quick look. And then on Saturday, I do a deep dive. And I've done this every Saturday since I've started the business in 2009. This is my routine. I get my report between 2 and 3 o'clock on Friday. I actually started asking for it a little bit earlier now, because I get more reports now, so I have more to go through. So on Fridays, I spend time doing that, and then Saturdays I do a deep dive, and I look for the outliers. What's going on? Why? Where's our books? Why has it changed? So far this month, I'll be honest with you, we're like $300,000 behind the mark. So for me, I'm kind of trying to say, why is it $300,000? Where is it? Well, then it gets me to ask questions, right? So I ask questions to my team. Hey, are we missing some billing? Well, come to find out, we have a big job that we're doing in California that didn't meet the mark. So we can't bill for all the material in on that job right now, but we're going to try to get it in by the end of the month. So now I know, okay, well, we're really not $300,000 off, but it encouraged me to ask the question, right? Look for things that are going to ask questions. It's good to be curious. So, I can't remember. We were talking about each time my business got a little bit better. So I'll fast forward here a little bit. So Empire, I started doing a pretty good job of keeping track of things. We were profitable. We've had some bad months, but we've had way more good months. We've grown. That little bank that loaned me the first $30,000. Now we have a line of credit there that's over $1 million. Actually, it's 1.4 that we borrow, and sometimes we borrow all of it, and sometimes we pay it all back, and sometimes we borrow half of it and we pay it back. And it's this thing. But that little bank that took a chance on me now is making pretty good interest off of us, and I like that, right? And they like it. They claim we're one of their favorite customers. So with that being said, the second business I did was My Salesman. And My Salesman was a completely different business model, because it's more of a SaaS company and a little bit different marketing plan. I totally botched marketing on that the first couple of years. I did this mailer. I spent $10,000 and I literally got 0 leads from it. It was awful. I spent $10,000 that it didn't have. I borrowed the money from Empire. By the way, I also, as Empire was growing, I kept borrowing more from Empire. One time, My Salesman was in debt over $500,000 to Empire, and we had to buckle down and get it all paid back, which we did, which was great. But with that being said, the next business I did was ESC, and that was a welding shop. That's what this building is that we had breakfast in this morning is ESC. Empire Supply Company is what it stands for. And that one's been a struggle because it's a different kind of business model, but the books are very organized. The people are very organized. Our workflow is very organized. I mean, it's just so much easier because we've learned that to make this happen, you've got to follow these rules, with the bookkeeping and so on. But the mistake I made in that company was I bought that company on a whim. I bought a welding shop out on a whim. I literally said, I went to see why they were behind, and I went and talked to the guy, and I said, what can I do to help you catch up? I need all this welding done now. And he just said, Matt, I'm 66 years old. I don't want to work this hard. I really don't even know what I want to do next. He goes, I'm thinking about selling out. I go, oh, you are? Well, how much do you want for all this? He gave me a number. I called the bank. I said, hey, can I write a check? And they said, yeah. I went, oh, which by the way, when your bank says yeah, you should probably scratch your head because it's too easy, right? You should have to work for things, believe it or not. But that one was really easy. So I bought this welding shop. Had no clue how to run a welding shop, but I knew that we had all this work we had to do and that it was part of what Empire needed anyhow. We need gates, we need dugout roofs, we need all these different things. So I bought that on a whim. Horrible mistake. Terrible, because I just jumped into it. I literally jumped out of the plane without a parachute and said, I'll figure it out along the way, which is okay to do, but it's not the right way to do it. So then when I decided to do Unlimited Sports Solutions, the latest company that we're doing, I was very methodical about putting it together. Matter of fact, Ron, that runs that for me, we met 3 times before we even made a job offer. And then I gave him 6 months to do research on the business. Like I almost went the other way so hard. I mean, I took my time. I just said, this is an investment. Some people put money in the stock market. I put money, I considered it putting money in the stock market, but I put it in a human, in Ron, and said, let's figure out how to have Unlimited Sports Solutions so we can sell the products that we install now. Way better way of doing it than the ESC way, right? I had a plan, we executed it, and that business to date is doing very well. It's still been a grind, as any business is, but it's not near the chaos that the welding shop was. The welding shop had these ebbs and flows, and it's been steadier because we planned better.
Yeah.
My advice to anybody is you're never going to do it right the first time, but get better as you do it, right? And as we do business, I'm better at starting businesses now. I feel like the next time I start a business, it's going to be the best one we do as far as order of operations and having a policy and we can afford to do it better now, right? I think this morning you and I were talking about working in your business, working on your business. And when you first start out, you're doing everything. You're working on it, you're working in it, you're working around it, beside it, underneath it, on top of it. It's a nightmare. So as you grow, it becomes a little bit easier.
I was going to ask you if there'd be a next business, but I already knew the answer.
Yeah. There is. Matter of fact, I just met with a guy last week, and I believe we're going to build him a building, and we're going to partner with him. The other thing that I've learned in business is it's good to have knowledge of what you're doing. When I bought the welding company, I really didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know anything about fabrication. I'm just a farm kid, so I thought I knew how to fabricate, but that's not how you build rails, not how you build stuff. So this next business, I'm actually going to partner with a guy. Nobody knows this yet. Matter of fact, there's only one person that really knows what's going on here, and that's because I've been inviting him to the meetings because I'm trying to also teach people how to do this. So when I'm gone, we can keep growing and keep doing things. And so one of Josh, my right-hand man, he's been going to the meetings with me and asking questions and learning how to put this together. But the next business that we're going to do, he already has the business. We're just going to buy into his business, and he wants to do the operations part, but he needs somebody to coach the business. So I'm going to be the business side of things, and he'll do it. And I think that'll be the best business we've ever put together. Plus, we're taking our time. We're talking about, here's some advice. All right, bunny trail. Ready? Time out on the other conversation. In business, when you have partners or you're bringing people along the side, spend more time talking and planning for the success than the failure. It's so important because the failure is actually pretty easy. It hurts and it's very painful, but it's easy, right? If you're partners, you split, you go away. But what happens if you're successful? because money can change people faster than anything. So if you are successful and you do have some money and you do have outside voices, and a lot of times it's your family talking about, well, you did this for this person or they owe you this, then those outside voices don't know the whole picture of what's going on within the business. It can be dangerous and toxic. It can be just downright mean sometimes. So my advice to people before you ever go into a partnership or even before you start a business with your spouse or with your friends or with people that are working there, talk about the successes. What does that look like? Talk about, how do we stay humble? How do we keep the arrogance checked at the door? And how do we ignore those outside voices that are chirping in your ear of, so let's say you and I are partners, and I'm not going to pick on Nicky Joe at all, but I'm not insinuating anything other than you and I are partners. And we're partners for 5 years, and we're both grinding it and going at it. But she sees you get up every single morning at 4 o'clock in the morning and work all day long till 9, 10 o'clock at night. And then, and all she does is hear about Matt going to his kids' ball games and going on vacations and doing all this stuff. That's all she hears about. She doesn't know what goes on in my private world. And then she starts chirping in your ear about, well, you know, you're at 4 o'clock every single morning. What's he doing? I just saw Facebook, he was on vacation. Well, now that's that outside voice. And I'm not picking on your spouse. I'm just saying it's that outside voice because they're trying to protect you, trying to say, you need to talk to them. You need to tell them you need to make more money because you're doing this, and you're doing this. Those are those outside voices that don't know the whole scene. They don't know what you and I are doing together. They don't necessarily know all the little things that I'm doing to help you win and the things that you're doing to help me win. So before you ever get in a partnership, talk about what happens when those outside voices come in. What happens when there's success? That's scarier than what happens if there's failure. Because you won't even see that happening. You won't even recognize it starting. It'll start chipping away at the relationship that you and I have. Not intentional. I'm not being mean. I'm sure Nicky Joe would take good care of you and she would never pick on me. But it can come from even a best friend that starts whittling on you, and those little voices start coming in and they don't realize. So advice to anybody getting a partnership, spend a lot of time talking about what happens if we are successful. Because that's scary.
I think it'll be good.
Tell me what was going through your head. I want to hear it because listen, I don't share a lot of this with a lot of people. I just use this now.
Yeah.
Before, I told Ron, before you get into this business with me, I'm not worried about what happens if we fail. I'm going to be out $100,000. Big deal. What's going to happen when we win and we sell this business for $75 million and you have a $6 million profit sharing check coming? Your wife is going to be pissed because she's going to think it should be $12 million. And he's like, well, she would never do that. Can you guarantee that?
I think the other element is the front end, and you're a visionary. We don't know each other on a super personal level, but I have to imagine that it's safe to assume that we share the high of the excitement about the idea, especially our idea, right? And you and I are talking about going into business together. And the energy in that is so strong. And it's nothing but enthusiasm. I think the other dimension is what happens when that enthusiasm wears off. Have we set the clear expectations of one another of what that looks like?
Right. And is one of us willing to take the initiative to do something to create the next spark? Around here, I'm constantly looking of how do I get the next person excited about what they're doing, because we do get complacent, right? Tom Osborne did this with Coach Cook, the volleyball team. I don't know if you know this, but here in Nebraska, we're very passionate about our volleyball.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a big deal. But they are one of the absolute top organizations in the nation, and Husker volleyball is a big deal. Well, Coach Cook wanted to retire. He'd won some national championships. What happens when you reach the ceiling? He literally thought there was nowhere else to go. And Tom Osborne, in his wisdom, knew that he was going to lose a guy that still had some fire in him. But how do you recreate that fire again? How do you get him excited? So they used to play at this place called the Coliseum. I don't know, had a couple thousand people probably able to watch. And then he went over and he said, "This is Bob Devaney. I'm gonna make this the home for you with the gymnastic team and the wrestling team. But you get to be in charge of making this dream whatever you want." And it restarted another fire in Coach Cook. And thank goodness, because he's still here and they're still dominating. But you have to figure out in our relationship, I have to be smart enough to say, you know what, I need to help you restart another fire. How do we spark that fire again? And partnerships are tough. And even if you do a partnership that isn't a true, there's a lot of different ways to do a partnership, right? I have lots of partners around here, and I consider them all part of the team. And I think they all feel like they really are part of it. I feel like most of them feel like they own it, like they wear the brand, they love it. But how do I keep them enthusiastic about wanting to grow that business, owning it, and saying, let's go, but yet stay out of their way enough that you don't. I have a big personality sometimes, so it can snuff out other personalities. So I have to be careful when I'm doing things to back off, right? To let Kelsey and Rachel have time with you, because I even caught myself yesterday. I just took over the whole tour, and I walked away as I was driving down the road going, why didn't I just let them keep doing the tour? I would love to have gone along and listen to what their point of view was. I just naturally want to just take over, and it's a curse sometimes. So then I was like, well, you know what? I need to just let them be with Brad and Nikki and do their thing and not take up all the air in the room. It's a curse.
Most things, in my experience, are a two-edged sword. Right?
Yeah.
Biggest strengths can often be our biggest obstacles and blind spots too, right?
Yep.
What does leadership mean to you, Matt?
Oh boy, that is a loaded question. That's such a tough question because depending on what you're doing, depending on what situation you're in is where you need to be as a leader. And I struggle sometimes with letting the room not be as good as it can be. So if I walk into a meeting and I read body language, and I got guys that are falling asleep, and I got guys that are not paying attention, or they're texting on their phone, or they're looking at Facebook, man, I just want to explode. It's just my nature to say, all right, that's it. You're done running this meeting. I'll run this meeting. Watch this. Let's go. And I can turn it on. But what I'm learning is that the more I do that, it's actually counterproductive. It's not healthy. It's not good for the person that is leading. I need to come alongside of them and encourage them, or to ask some good questions that might stimulate thought in the room, or to say, hey, where are we going for this? Or to say, hey, why don't we take a little break, time out, and I need to pull that leader aside, and I need to say, hey, you're losing these guys. I don't know. Jump on the table. And they're like, do what? Just jump on the table. Do something to get them to go, oh boy, this is out of the ordinary. That's the role I need to take, but that's not the role I've taken for years. The role I've taken for years is I just come in and I just take over, and it's horrible. And then afterwards I leave, and we don't grow from it, because they're just like, oh, well, Matt will run that meeting. That's the opposite of what I'm trying to do now. Now I'm trying to be the kind of leader that says, what can I do to empower you? What can I do to make you understand that you're losing these guys? So growing up in an environment that's abusive, you learn how to read body language, which is the key sign to know when you're going to either get hit or uh, or or go fly a kite. So you learn. I thought everybody knew how to read body language. What I'm learning as I get older, that's a gift that was given to me at a young age. I learned how to walk by the windows to look inside the house to see what was going on, to get a feel. And I could get a sense of what was going on inside the house before I ever got in the house. So I knew, do I run for cover, or is this going to be a good day? Is this going to be a bad day? Is this going to be a day that I need to figure out how to get the heck out of here? I learned that at a young age. But what I'm learning is that when we do our Monday morning meetings, we go around and I fist bump every single person. What I'm learning now is I'm starting to try to teach a few of our people to look for signs because they don't know it. Today, we have a young man that I recognized, and I asked Scott, I said, hey, what's going on with such and such? And he says, well, his mom passed away. Why? I said, man, he's horrible. Go find him, help him, tell him to do it. He goes, man, I already did. And he's out of PTO. And I started talking. Scott right away said, I already told him it doesn't matter. Take whatever time you need. We'll pay you to be gone, because we don't give a crap about PTO. I mean, we do because we have to have in our stupid handbook, which is the nemesis of an entrepreneur, especially a creative entrepreneur. The handbook is the worst thing ever. It holds you accountable in so many dumb ways. You should probably cut all that out, by the way. You should not be saying that publicly. But anyhow, but body language is something that I saw today. I knew he was hurting. I knew something was going on, but I didn't know what was going on. So we talked about it a little bit, and that's, I believe, leadership, right? Is trying to teach your people how to do your gifts that you do have, and learning from others their gifts that they have. We have some leaders here that teach me all the time. I watch them. I'm like, ooh, that was well done. I like the way you handled that. I need to put that in my book. So that's the question was, what is leadership? Oh, we could go on for hours and talk about what is leadership. And the more I watch podcasts and listen to YouTube videos, I just don't think you can sum it up in a short phrase. It's all the above. Leadership is, well, they talk about the wolf, right? The old wolf always is in the back of the pack, watching everybody, making sure everything's good. It's the young wolf that's out front, leading the charge, right? Breaking the path through the snow and doing that. That's the leader in the front. The one in the back is the old wolf that's making sure everybody's okay. So he leads from the rear. There's leadership.
What does it take? You know, you've told me a couple of times that a huge amount of the growth here, you guys have over 100 people on your team, and a huge amount of that's happened in the last few years.
Yeah.
What does it take to do that as a leader, to be ready for that?
Wow. It's tough. Tons of sacrifice. Grit. Oh, ton of grit. You got to be willing to get your feelings hurt. You got to be willing to know that the people around you have to get the recognition. You have to be willing to be the bad guy. You don't get to be the good guy very often. It's almost something you would never sign up for. But boy, it sure is rewarding on the end. I mean, it feels good. Today, that was awesome that we can feed all those people as a family, sit down around the table and talk, to mentor. You know, as soon as I got done, I was talking about my grandma's death, and one of the guys came up to me, and actually it happened upstairs. He says, because he lost a son at an early age, and he said, I get it. Watching death is tough. He goes, you hit home with me right there. So, you know, you get a platform like that, and you it's such a huge responsibility too, to try to stand up there and say something that's going to resonate with the guys. They've all heard my story about JC at the final day. You know, the sitting around the table, and he's going to be betrayed by two of the guys sitting right next to him. I've told that story to these guys probably, I don't know how many times, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 times I've told that story, hoping that someday it'll sink in that we have to wash the feet of everybody, even the ones that are going to betray us. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it does. It's a different perspective than most of the world's perspective on that.
A lot of people think too that just one guy betrayed him. They forget that the guy that he built this church on ultimately betrayed him too, 3 times.
Yeah.
The difference is the aha.
Well, all but John ran away.
Yeah.
His closest companions fell asleep in his suffering in the garden. Yeah. Yeah, I have to share a story with you. Remind me, we have to share that story of Babette about Grace. It's really good.
So you're not going to share that story now?
I would do it injustice if I tried to tell it. I just have to share it. Like it's not my story. It's just a story that I heard recently about.
Okay. Good.
The magnitude of that gift and how little we understand.
It's deep, isn't it?
Yeah. How little we understand. How much it's so beyond taking it for granted. Like sometimes we resent the greatest gifts because we don't understand them. But anyway, it's something I would love to share with you. It touched me. Company culture. That's something I hear you talk about a lot.
I wish we could come up with a different name for culture, because it's starting to wear on me a little bit. Culture. I feel like every time I turn around, I'm saying culture.
What is company culture?
It's so much bigger than the word, right? Everybody has culture. Everybody tries to care. But do you really implement? I know a fence company, and they're actually not. They're a supplier. And they're constantly talking about culture. But every time I go to their yard to pick up material, I look around and I think, this is smoke and mirrors. This isn't culture. They say the right things, but they're not implementing the right things. And just even down to the forklift driver, he's miserable. It just reeks of bullshit. And it's sad. And that's something that I think you have to be very careful about when you're running a business and you're the ultimate leader, that you don't get caught up in the BS and saying we have good culture, but never look in the mirror and really say, oof, we could do so much better. We're not really doing the best we can. The best to our ability.
If I were to ask one of your team members to define the company culture at Empire, what would you want them to repeat back? What would you have wanted them to pick up on?
that we are servant, that this company is driven with a servant mentality, that we are going to serve others constantly. We're going to take care of each other constantly. My goal for this company and our culture is that everybody that comes here knows that we've got their back. And I can only really control me and what I do. I can't really always control everybody else. So my goal is to make sure that people understand all the time that, listen, I'll go to bat for you. Matter of fact, I'm not afraid to kick somebody's ass for you. When a general contractor is picking on our guys, I get very defensive, and they've seen it. I've walked into meetings and said, you won't treat our people like this anymore. It's going to stop right now. I've been threatened by the second largest construction company in the nation. I've been threatened to be thrown out of a meeting in front of 60 other owners because I stood up and I said, your demands are what's creating a toxic culture. And they didn't like that, even though they just got done saying, tell us what you think. So then when I said, you don't want us to really share how we feel and how we think, because your culture is this masquerade that you're going around, you're doing all these things that feel and look right, but really you don't really care about us. You care that the client's happy.
Yeah.
That's all you care about. And they didn't like that. Matter of fact, I handed my phone to the guy next to me and I said, I've got this on record. You're going to want to get this because it's going to be really good when they're dragging me out of here. I wasn't leaving.
It's so obvious that this is important to you. It means a lot to you.
Mm-hmm.
Why is building this kind of culture?
Shouldn't it be for everybody?
Of course it should, but why for you?
Why isn't it for everybody? I'm serious. Why isn't it for everybody? Tell me.
We as humans are inherently selfish. And it's hard to talk about business outcomes that don't have personal, tangible, selfish goals. And it's obvious that you're driven by something more than that.
So I think that we live in some of the greatest times ever right now. And when I hear people talk about how horrible society is today, it's so disappointing to me because I've been all over this country. I've been in towns all over this country, and there are good people all over. I broke down one time on Highway 36, just outside of Hannibal, Missouri. Blew a tire on a trailer. Didn't realize that I didn't have the right socket to get the trailer tire off to fix it. I don't know if you know anything about deer hunting, but deer hunters are very passionate about hunting season. It was during hunting season. I had a deer hunter stop and said, hey, I'm going to make a phone call to my buddy. He's going to come over and he's going to take care of you because we've got a big buck right over here that our friends got spotted and we got to go over there. And then he came back later that day to check on us to make sure. And not only that, but he said, hey, go to the local tire shop. By the way, the tire shop was closed. It's closed. They called in another young man and said, come in. He came in with his newborn wife or his newborn child and his new wife to help me fix my tire on my trailer. All these people did this for $86. And we're in the worst times ever. I don't know if you remember, but there's stories about in the 60s where we had a couple people assassinated. We had a war going on with no end. We had protests in the streets. We had riots in the streets. We had horrible racism. It was a horrible time in America's history. We're not living in the worst times ever. But it takes us to say that instead of buying into everybody else's crap of saying that we're in the worst times ever. You know what? I just spent an hour and a half with 100 people, and it was awesome. We're in some of the greatest times ever. Not the worst times ever. But it takes you and me to stand up and say that. And I believe that it literally, we can, if we start a spark, we can start a fire. So let's be different. Let's do culture different. Let's do humanity different. Let's be better. Now, that doesn't mean I don't get disappointed or upset. I'm a passionate guy.
Yeah. I don't know how much you want to share about this.
Uh-oh.
But you've shared a little bit with me about kind of what happens when leadership and culture get off track and taking corrective action and kind of how that's played out. Talk about that.
Right. You cannot hold people accountable without a relationship. That's point blank. Okay. So, by the way, I hope you know that I'm fully admitting that we don't have culture figured out. I believe we understand that we have to work at it constantly to have good culture. That you have to wake up every single day saying, I'm going to be a better human today. I'm going to figure out a way to inspire somebody today. I'm going to figure out a way to make somebody smile today. I'm going to figure out a way to give somebody a compliment today. I'm going to find something that they did that's good, and I'm going to share it with them, and maybe even share it with the whole room if I can. You have to do that every single day. And if you can do that every single day, and if you can build a relationship, which I do believe that I have with our people, I genuinely believe, and maybe I'm naive, and maybe I'm just being arrogant, but I genuinely believe that the most of the people that we ate breakfast with today give a shit about me, about my family, about Scott and Jamie, about Kelsey and Rachel and Jamie, or I already said Jamie. Jamie doesn't get twice. He's not that special. But I literally believe that they care about it. And then did you notice that the people that served all the food are some of our top leaders? And then each one of them said thank you. And I believe them. I believe that they are sincere about, and I believe that the people sitting in the room believe them. But that's because we have a relationship, because we've worked on this all year long. We worked on this since 2015. 2015 is when I pushed on the gas on culture and I said, doggone it, we can do this better. Now, once you get that relationship, now you can have accountability. You cannot, it just doesn't work to try to have accountability without a relationship. You have to have trust. Trust has proof. And you have to have proof that I'm going to do what I can to take care of you. That if you need an extra day, I'm going to give it to you no matter what. I wanted to have a policy that we had unlimited PTO. This is something that the tech world does, right? That you have unlimited PTO. And I haven't figured it out yet. Someday I have actually figured it out. Here's my secret. You put in your handbook that you only have so many days, but really you give them as many as they need and they want. Now, you also have to hope that nobody abuses that, right? But if they do, you have to be okay with it. Did you catch that?
Mm-hmm.
Because inevitably people are going to let you down. And you can't dwell on the ones that let you down here and there. You have to dwell on the ones that pick you up and the ones that are helping you win. The ones that are there for you on a Saturday morning. The ones that are there. You can't dwell on the ones that didn't make it to work. So what we did a couple weeks ago here is I was pretty hard on the entire team. And I challenged anybody to leave that didn't want to be here. And I gave them, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes to have the option to leave and not to be fired. Just leave. If you don't want to be here, if you don't want to be great, if you don't want to be an elite status, we're not going to fire you. We're happy to have you, but I don't want you in this room right now. And nobody left. Then I took it one step further and I said, you know what? I'm going to have you all sign this paper. That way, if by chance you didn't want to be embarrassed in front of the entire group, you don't have to sign this paper. And if you don't sign this paper, then I'll know that you just want to be a worker bee, and that's fine. We're okay with that. Every single person signed the paper. That day we had, I believe, 86 people at that meeting. So they say that if you take the square root of how many people you have, so if you have 100 people, the square root of that would be 10, those 10 people do 80% of the work and carry 80% of the load. Have you heard this analogy?
I've heard the 80-20 principle.
Okay, well, this is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Take the square root of whatever you have, and that's how many people are really carrying the load of your company.
Okay. Now,
I've heard this. Jordan Peterson has said it a couple different times, but I've heard a lot of great business people say this. I went. I'm an overthinker. Yeah, it's a problem I have. But I went through and I made a list of how many we have. We have 34 today that I feel are doing 80% of the load. A great number, by the way. I believe it's part of the reason why we're successful is because we have a lot of people that really are doing more than their share. But I told the whole group the same thing that I'm telling you right now. And I said, listen, I want 50 or 60 because I think we can be that kind of company. Who wants to come along? Who wants to be a part of that 50 or 60 that are doing great things here? And along the way, we're going to do life together and we're going to have a lot of fun. And we do. We hoot and holler. We jump up and down. We eat breakfast together. We have some after parties. We do different stuff together. But that's part of who we want to be. That's the corrective. I believe we get to make corrective action. By the way, you have to do that from time to time. When you have children, as a parent, you get tired of just constantly nagging. So you just let things slip. And then all of a sudden one day you're like, oh boy, we got to put an end to that. So then you crack the whip. And everybody's like on edge. Oh, that's that corrective action to try to get the ship straightened back out, right? And when you have 100 people, it gets even harder to do corrective action. But I believe we did it over a 21-day period. We changed the direction of the ship over the last 3 weeks.
It's a biblical concept that a father's love comes with chastening, right?
Yes.
They go hand in hand. You shared a little bit with me yesterday about the future of leadership here. And, today, the subject of finality came up. What does your vision of legacy look like for Empire? What does that mean to you?
I believe George Bush said it best when he said that the future will tell my legacy, when he was talking about the Iraq War and different things. And I was really, really angry at George Bush for a long time because I was just disappointed because I really thought he was going to fix some things, right? Then I read his book, Decisions, and it dawned on me that we just can't control everything, right? So you have to just do your best, and then hopefully your legacy will play out to be something positive. I've asked some of our leaders, what do they want their legacy to be? So I'm trying to figure out, what is their legacy? What do they want to leave behind? I've asked Benjamin, what do you want out of this? What impact do you want to leave on people? And my goal is that, and my legacy can be that I help them all reach their full potential or what their ability to do. That's the goal. We'll see if I can do that. But I want their legacy to come true, their dreams to come true. I'm telling you, I really do believe that we can make dreams come true. I really do firmly believe that. You have to be intentional, right? But I really do firmly believe that we can walk out there in that room, walk up to any certain person and say, give me a dream. What's sad is a lot of them don't have dreams because they haven't been taught to dream. They haven't been taught to fantasize about what could be in the future. They haven't been taught that. For me, I'm fortunate enough to have a crazy enough mom growing up that she really did believe she could do anything. I guess I took that from her and said, I really do believe we can do anything.
If you could, looking backwards, if
That's
you
the
could,
rearview mirror.
yeah, if you could go back and tell 18-year-old Matt.
Oh boy, I've done this game. You know, I don't like this question. Next. Cut.
Why?
Because it's not really fair. I don't want to tell him anything. I want him to fail and stumble and hurt and cry.
You wouldn't go back.
Never.
Keep all the experiences.
Every one of them. I don't want to do them again. Oh, especially my childhood. I don't want to do that again. I don't want to wish that upon anybody. It hurts. Not one bit. I wouldn't even if I had a time machine to go back, I wouldn't. Never.
I had the opportunity to spend some time with Wyatt last year when he came to visit.
Oh yeah.
What would you say to young men, young women who are beginning their entrepreneurial journey? How do they avoid some of the unnecessary failure, or is it all necessary?
So first of all, a lot of people think they want to be an entrepreneur because they hear Tony Robbins talk about all the great things of being a business owner, or they hear Jim Rohn or Jim Collins or Simon Sinek talk about all these great things. But I really do firmly believe that not everybody's cut out to be that. And for the longest time, I didn't understand that. I used to think that just everybody wanted to be the best in their field. Everybody wants to be the top manager they can be. The older I get, the more I realize not everybody wants that. That's what makes us all unique. So the first thing I say to any entrepreneur, anywhere, anytime, is hold on. Hold on and ride that bull as long as you can. And if you get bucked off, dust off your cowboy hat, put it back on, and get back in that chute and go again, because it's going to be a ride. It's literally like riding a bull. You ever rode a bull? You're taking a 2,300-pound specimen athlete that doesn't want you on their back at all, with horns that hurt really, really bad. And you're going to hop on this thing and you're going to try to hold on for 8 seconds for as long as you possibly can. And 8 seconds doesn't seem like much, but really it's 8 seconds. And 8 seconds goes fast. But when you're in it on that bull, it's forever. That's business. Man, I look back when we were building that building and it kept raining and it kept raining and it kept raining and we couldn't get that building built. We had overcharges. We had to get fly ash. We had to rework the soil. We started that building. I had the preacher come out and pray over the ground that we were going to build for, because I thought, I want this to be blessed by my local pastor.
Yeah.
I get the soils report back the very next day. It's all contaminated. It all has to come out. We got a $60,000 bust on day one. That's business. That's that 8-second ride. I didn't think we'd ever get that building built, but we kept riding and riding and riding. And now we have a beautiful building. But boy, when you walk in it, you wouldn't know that on day one, we had to freaking dig 4 feet deep on the entire building pad, all out, and put all new soil in. Did you see that? Could you recognize that when you walked in there? Do you even have a clue what we had to go through to get that built? So everybody sees the success on the end, but no one realizes the 8-second ride that you had the whole way. And maybe that's a bad analogy, riding a bull, but I just think that it's such a powerful thing because, one, I have a huge respect for bull riders. They willingly get on that huge animal and they're going to try to ride this for our sheer entertainment purposes.
Yeah.
That's an entrepreneur.
If you could boil it down to one trait that an entrepreneur needs.
Grit. It's pure grit. You got to be willing to wake up every single day and put a smile on your face and be tough every single day, no matter how much you hurt, no matter how sad you are, if you're having a headache, if you're not feeling well. You have to have grit. If you want to win, you have to have an incredible amount of grit, and it's a nightmare. And you're going to get picked on. You're going to get picked on from your spouse for working too much, for not spending enough time here, for missing birthdays. I can't tell you how many birthdays poor Jamie's missed of his kids, or football games that Rachel's missed, or it just dawned on me the other day that Melanie and Ashley were talking about a trip that they took. I was like, well, I don't remember that. They're like, oh yeah, you were working. It's tough.
But if you can hang on, what's the biggest reward?
Hold on to the bull. Can we go back to the analogy of bull riding? What's the reward?
Yeah. What's the biggest reward? The best reward?
Having a guy that put in his 2-week notice, that comes up to you, gives you a hug and says, thank you. Because of you, I have more money in my savings account than my mom and dad have ever had. That's the reward.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. This has been a really good conversation. Thank you for sharing, being open.
Oh, thank you for making the trek out here to little old Waverly, Nebraska.
I wouldn't miss it. Glad we're out here. Hope it's not the last one.
You're welcome to come anytime. We love this. I will warn you, though, the next time you come, it'll look different. We're going to constantly be changing the scenery out here, keeping it real.
I look forward to watching this story continue to play out.
I'll send you an aerial every once in a while.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yep.